Diana. Please introduce yourself briefly.
My name is Diana Lopez. 私は23歳です。Mi papá es de México y mi mamá es de Guatemala. 我是美国人的。
So, what just happened there?
I introduced myself in English, Japanese, Spanish, and Chinese because I speak 4 different languages and have been heavily influenced by different cultures.
And why is that?
I was raised in a dual culture home, Mexican and Guatemalan, and raised in the United States. Later on in life, I lived abroad and was introduced into the Japanese and Chinese cultures, which I adopted as my own.
So, how did being raised in a dual cultural household have an effect on your individuality?
Well, my father is Mexican, and the Mexican culture is loud and rambunctious. We like to party and be unified. Being in that culture, I discovered that although I did accept a lot of things and take them as my own, I did find myself to be different, as in I was maybe a little bit more reserved and sometimes didn't understand the dry humor. My mother is Guatemalan, and the Guatemalan accent when they speak Spanish is very neutral, which demonstrates their very calm, reserved, and formal nature. Being half Mexican, I often found myself very straightforward and oftentimes too loud with the Guatemalans, but I do all my critical thinking and sometimes hesitant nature to that culture as well.
Was it difficult for you to introduce your dual cultures into your American settings?
Of course. I was raised in a culture where you go up to someone and to greet them, you kiss them on the cheek. Going into the culture of the United States, things had to be different. I shook hands instead of kissing people on the cheek. I had to try and understand different humor and learn different words for things. For example, one time in my physics class, we were watching the news and there was a big protest going on about immigration. One of the students turned around in his chair and looked at me and said, "You Mexicans, go back to where you came from." And I was really confused because where I came from was just down the street. I was born and raised in Salt Lake, and even though I did have 2 cultures in my household, I was still part of the United States. A little bit confused, a little bit different, but still a United States citizen.
How was living abroad? How did that affect your individuality?
Individuality is what makes up a person and what makes them different from other people. Being in the United States, I was a certain someone, and then going abroad, I was someone else. I lived in both China and Japan. In China, I was the only person raised in the United States, one of maybe 20 native English speakers, and I was different. In China, I had to assimilate myself in different ways and take on different attributes that I wouldn't have anywhere in the United States.
So people made you conform to their culture? How so?
For example, living in China, their idea of beauty is different than that in the United States. Pale face, dark hair, red lips is, very beautiful for them. And being tan, I was walking down the streets of the grocery store and people would offer me bleaching products to bleach my face. Being in a different part of the world, I had to try to understand the different way of thinking that they had.
So you said you lived in Japan.
Yes.
How is it that living in Japan changed you? What did you pick up culturally?
One thing about the Japanese culture that I thoroughly enjoyed was how formal they are, and how much respect they have one to another. My Japanese friends would use the formal language to speak to others, and I learned that their culture is a lot about not only being respectful towards others and being humble towards others, but also not having pride in oneself. So things like bowing and being extra polite to people, I used to think as a little bit weird, but I understood that it was just the way that they show love, and I enjoyed that.
How do you identify yourself then?
That depends on where I am and who I'm with. If I'm with my Hispanic friends that were born and raised in their native countries, then I'm someone who was raised in the United States, different from them. If I'm with a native Chinese person, I'm someone who understands their culture and loves it so much, but I'm still different, still from the United States. Everything that I am is just a gathering of all the different experiences that I have and all the places that I've been and all the people that I've loved. Who I am is everything that I have been and everything that I will be.
Okay, cool. Thank you.